So I want to get into some of these ideas of how the sort of new security landscape works. As you're right. In the past, we have this idea: all I need is a firewall. If I'm inside the firewall, I've got my little wall garden. Everything is happy, and they're barbarians. But as long as they stay outside the gate, that's fine. And I don't have to really, maybe I can hear the sounds of the portcullis getting banged against, but I don't really have to really, deal with it. Like, is it an ogre? Is it a dragon? I don't really care too much. But now, like things like artificial intelligence, how is that helping to spur innovation in terms of using tools like AI and machine learning and data mining to really sort of understand these threats better and maybe do some of this automated response? And how's that going to affect the professionals working with them?
A lot of people who get into cybersecurity roles is a tier 1 SOC analyst. And just for your viewers who don't know, I'm not talking about my socks, which are pink. Rather, I'm talking about
just for those who know, explain what a SOC is. Yes.
Yeah, the Security Operations Center. People who are monitoring the health of an organization. So when I say SOC, that's SOC. So a tier 1 SOC analyst gets out of college. She thinks that she's going to have this awesome job doing all kinds of interesting stuff. She's handed a checklist. And every day, her job is to work down that checklist and go through each of those items manually. This is, at best, it is very manual work. It is often very tiresome work. It's very repetitive work. If you look at the Cisco study from 2017, just came out actually, we've got analysts who can get through about 44% of all of the security alerts that are coming through in a day. Right? That means 56% of your alerts, you're just not even got time to look at because you're doing a checklist, you're looking for indicators of compromise, you're trying to mentally do correlation and say, is there a pattern here? Is this something I've seen before? And it's all checklist driven. And so people who get into those tier 1 SOC analyst roles often will leave the profession frustrated after that first year because it's boring, it is dull, it is not exciting. I did not get in this job to follow a checklist. And that's the challenge where artificial intelligence and machine learning do have that promise of being able to synthesize large amounts of data without getting bored. Your AI, it's a computer. Here's the reason that artificial intelligence is not going to take over the world. We're giving it all the dull jobs we don't want. One of those dull jobs we don't want is being a SOC tier 1 analyst and doing basic work. What people are really good at is in using their own intuition and using their own experience to say, this is a higher priority item than the other 5,000 alerts on my screen. That's something that artificial intelligence cannot yet do. It can say, here's a trend. A whole bunch of these machines are connecting to this weird IP address in a country where you don't have an office. Maybe that's weird, maybe that's not. But a human can actually say, let's look into that a little bit further. Let's actually dive into that. And it shifts the conversation from being somebody who's just reading the log files, which is a former Unix sysadmin, it's dull as dirt, to being somebody who can be a threat hunter. And what an awesome job title, threat hunter. You tell me you don't go out to West Chicago right now and say, hey, you want to be a threat hunter when you grow up? Kids are going to go, that is an awesome sounding job. Tell me more. You say, hey, you want to look at log files all day on a computer screen? You're not going to get a lot of takers there. And that's kind of where we're seeing this trend in artificial intelligence and machine learning, not treating humans like machines, but rather allowing us to do what we do best.
I want to go back and talk a little bit more about some of these career paths, but I just first want to talk about one thing that also popped up in our prep. This is, you've talked about using AI to sort of recognize and automate some of these responses, but using AI in other roles like context-aware multi-factor authentication, and how AIs can work with that kind of technology.
That's a really powerful thing. And one of the things that I recommend to my clients, regardless of where they are on the cybersecurity maturity model, where the easiest amount of, for the lowest amount of money, the highest value they'll get is in deploying a multi-factor authentication solution, because frankly, passwords are dead. They're not a usable security mechanism. And the good thing is young people these days who are doing their online banking, they're used to, when they log into their bank, if their phone is going to prompt them, it's going to say, hey, you got to hit this button here. Prove that you've got your phone in your hand, or maybe you have to type a 6-digit code. And that really is the basis of multi-factor authentication. It's no longer based on a password. It's also based on something you have, like our mobile phones. And what that allows us to do is in a normal day, just a normal day at the office, I'll get an alert on my phone that's along the lines of, Kayne, I see you're in Bellingham. I see your laptop's in Bellingham. I see that your phone is in Bellingham. You're logging in from Australia. Is that legit? Nope. Nope, nope. And I can just hit deny. Whereas previously, if I did not have that layer of multi-factor authentication deployed and someone were able to acquire my password, whether through password spraying or credential stuffing or the other attack vectors, they could then effectively impersonate me. So being able to have a secure multi-factor authentication, that's good. Being able to have it be context aware of user location is better. What the best outcomes are is to only, because people, the thing with cybersecurity, people get annoyed by it. They get shortcuts. They get this idea, well, it's too hard or it slows my job down. Because if they're getting prompted for every single machine they log into, they've got to bring out their phone, tap a button.
Right.
That's degrading, right? So the best solutions that are currently in use today are context aware and say, this user is a systems administrator. She's logging in on the server. She logs into approximately the same time every day. That's fine, right? No problem. But it's 3 a.m. in the morning. She's logging into a machine she's never logged into before. She doesn't have a change ticket open. Let's prompt for multi-factor authentication. Now, I'm not saying let's block the connection request. Right? Some people in my industry would say, let's block the connection request because it's inherently suspicious. I'm saying do the multi-factor authentication because that prevents, the idea is a black swan event where something has never happened before and therefore it must be bad. Not necessarily true, right? I hang out with systems administrators. They know sometimes weird stuff happens and they have to go deal with it. So give them just a little bit of additional friction though for security and for safety rather than saying either block it outright or, oh, hey, you managed to guess their password or steal
or you
their
could,
token. Yeah, go ahead, get in.
Flag that log for interaction later on. Hey, capture, do a little more scrutinization of like these are some user logs you need to pay closer attention to, to make sure that to ratify what happened on that session. So
yeah, and beyond just user logs, session recording actually is the other thing that now this is again moving up that maturity spectrum beyond multi-factor authentication and having single sign-on for our end users and having their privileges being managed and audited. Having a recording, and I mean like a TiVo style, DVR style recording of their session, so you can actually see what did they do. Is incredibly powerful, and actually that also helps with PCI auditing, SOX auditing. All of the various audit standards have got some kind of statement that says you need to be able to show what the user did. Log files aren't enough context in that regard.
So we're getting a little bit towards the end of our time, but a lot of this does sound really super interesting, and I can see how being a threat hunter is kind of cool. So, what kind of skills do people need to acquire to sort of get in a field? Like if I want to get into this field, like what is my sort of checklist of things that I would like to like put onto my resume to get into my background, to put into my head so that I can be a good professional or a good threat hunter or analyst or whatever you want to call it?
I'd say that there's a number of industry certifications that are out there that do not require a 4-year degree. The CISSP or the Certified Ethical Hacker do come to mind. Ultimately, to get those, you need to have an aptitude and an interest in computers. That will certainly help. An interest in people, too, will also help. People who enjoy mystery novels, who enjoy solving problems, who like the whodunit movies, they are the ideal candidate for most cybersecurity roles because ultimately that's the mindset we're looking for is this thing happened, why did that happen? It's a bit of detective work at times for the actual people who are doing the hands-on keyboard work. Tools like I said, the certifications, CISSP, CEH are all very good. The other thing that, of course, I'm positing here, though, is that employers, to be successful in this space, need to stop having that focus on you need to have a 4-year degree in order to get into our industry. By doing that, we're effectively kneecapping how many good, talented people we can bring into these roles, and that's causing our current hiring crisis that we're facing. The other thing that I'll say as well is when you look at the job boards on the internet and they say 10 years of experience with technology X and 11 years of experience with technology Y, it's often comical when those technologies have existed for 2 years or less. So it's not something to be afraid of because right now cybersecurity is in a great deal of flux. The tools that people learn during those certification programs, that's just the tip of the iceberg. You have to have a long love of learning. And when you see that new technology, say, hey, I want to learn something about that so I can be conversant in it. Because this is not like a manufacturing job where you're going to go to a factory, you're going to do the same, press the same button every day, right? It's always changing. And so being mentally agile and flexible is the other real requirement in cybersecurity roles.
I think that's also a good reminder about the skills list, because something we often actually will remind readers, or I even remind people in any field, is, you know, the job description list is the ideal perfect candidate. Now, maybe they do truly need all that, but chances are actually maybe they'll be quite 80% or 90% of that might be perfectly happy to themselves, especially if the person who wrote the job description is not the person who's actually supervising the position. They may be quite willing. So if you feel you're like 80% of the way there, go ahead and apply. But the worst thing, they're going to say no. I mean, but don't knock yourself out of the running because you haven't reached this sort of literally what is an utterly unrealistic sometimes list of skills. I mean, they're hoping for the unicorn, but they're not going to get the unicorn. You know?
That's very true.
We talked a little bit. So what else can sort of academia enterprises do to foster greater interest in cybersecurity careers?
Talking about the benefits associated with these careers is really advantageous. A lot of people have negative imagery in their head around what is a cybersecurity job. And the truth of it is most cybersecurity jobs can be done remote, right? If you don't like going to an office, if you'd rather work from your couch or from your home office, or maybe from a beach resort in Costa Rica, perfect. That's great. Location is not really a dependency. And that's one of those things that I think we need to put into the national conversation is if you're hiring based on your local geography, maybe if you're in San Francisco, you're doing really well, or you're in New York, you're doing really well. But if you're in Iowa, or if you're in Newfoundland, or if you're in Brighton in the UK, you have a much smaller hiring pool. And so talking to people about location independence and also hour independence. Cybersecurity jobs are not your traditional 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. jobs, because the third-party attackers, they're not working 9 to 5. And if they are, they're not working your 9 to 5 because they happen to be a world away in terms of time zone differences. And so things will happen, things will go bump in the night, but it gives also a high degree of flexibility. If nothing's currently burning and you're on call, you can go do whatever you like during your time, provided that you're on Slack or on the other technology so you can stay in the loop with your colleagues, which means these are really actually great jobs for people who are like a working mother. For example, what a fantastic job. You can work from home, you can set your own hours, and only when something goes wrong do you really have to pay attention. Beyond that, you've got a high degree of flexibility in choosing your work times and your workspace. That's for the more progressive companies. For the ones that have a more traditional attitude, it's important to understand you're going to go work with a team of people who are going to be very smart, and they're going to want to support each other, because cybersecurity teams really become like families. They are invested in each other's success. There's a lot of mentoring available, a lot of peer support available. I think that we do ourselves a disservice in the industry by not bringing that up to people's attention, that you're going to work not as an isolated individual, but you're going to work with a large team of friends and people who you'll want to invite to dinner, who will tutor you and who you can provide feedback to as well, so you all learn together.
Well, that is fantastic. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. I mean, we could probably talk all day, but I want to thank you, Kayne McGladrey, so much for coming in to talk to us about the sort of these questions of cybersecurity in a hyper-connected world. And I'm Stephen Cass for IEEE Spectrum on the IEEE, and thank you very much today.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Thanks for having me on. Have a great day.
You too.